Hello everyone, all, I don't know, 4 of you who are watching this right now. I just thought I would introduce one of the more ridiculous projects for 2025 that I've created for myself, which is to read 3 books translated from Chinese for each decade of the 20th century. When I say from each decade, I mean takes place in that decade. I mean, having been written in that decade, like published in that decade, would be nice, but really just something that takes place in that decade. So we are starting in the 1900s, so like 1900 to 1909. And I did extensive research, read so many lists and articles online, and I have tracked down these 3 volumes. 2 of them I got out on interlibrary loan, which is why I have not removed the unsightly request tags, because it says right here, please do not remove paperwork. So I'm scared. I don't want to touch it. One I did purchase because that's just how committed I am to this completely imaginary challenge that I have set for myself. So this one that I purchased is The Death of Yuli by, oh gosh, am I just gonna have to voice over later myself trying to pronounce this nicely? I mean, I'll put it up on the screen if I've figured out how to do that by now. But let's say author Zhenya, translated, 2 translators, Gong Xiaohui and Lu Xiaoqian. What is interesting is that even though this one was published in 1912, I think, it was only just translated and published in the US in 2023, which I think is so fascinating. Published by Great Wall Publishing. I am a little concerned about this one because it does say on the front, an ill-fate lady's love story, which is not correct grammar. I think it would be an ill-fated lady's love story. So, oh, and then also cover design. That makes me a little worried that I'm in for an interesting translation. But I want to give it a shot. I want to see what happens. It does say that in 1912, a film was made of this movie. Oh, well, the film was made. Is that when it was published? Well, the preface says that it was printed into off-print in 1912. Well, anyway, I had a movie made of it in 1912. And then also I got a film in 1924 and a drama in 1926. And it's supposed to take place in around the turn of the century, first decade. Then we also have The Sea of Regret, which is actually 2 turn-of-the-century Chinese romantic novels, Stones in the Sea by Fu Lin and The Sea of Regret by Jianren, translated by Patrick Hanan. The 2 novels were published within a few months of each other in 1906, which is definitely within my time frame that I've created for myself. This was translated and published in English in 1995. So that's interesting. And then there is my great regret, which is Moment in Peking by Lin Yutang. I was not paying attention when I requested this. It is more than 800 pages long. It is 815 pages long, which means I'm going to start reading this right away so that I can actually get it done in time. This one, oh my goodness. It's definitely got that like old book smell, which is delightful. This one, this has been around. Oh, where did this come from? Martin Luther College. I didn't know that was a college here. New Ulm, Minnesota. Copyright 1939. We have a family tree. Oh yeah, so it starts out, so we know that this takes place when I want it to, because very first sentence, it was the morning of the 20th of July, 1900. So that fits my time frame. So it was at the very least published in English in 1939. Oh, maybe it was published in Chinese in 1939, because the dedication says, to the brave soldiers of China who are laying down their lives, that our children and grandchildren shall be free men and women. This volume, written between August 1938 and August 1939, is humbly dedicated. So maybe it was published in Chinese in that time. I wonder what the author thinks of China now, what would think of China now. Laying down their lives that our children and grandchildren shall be free men and women. Okay. This one does have good reviews. Moment in Peking. So I am willing to give it a try. I just have really decided to give myself a rough go of it right away. Did I say who the translator was? It doesn't say who translated this. It was published by the John Day Company. I will try and look up who translated this because translation is important and we should acknowledge them. So I will be updating you guys about all of my many adventures with these wildly obscure turn-of-the-century Chinese novels that nobody asked me to read, but that I decided to, just for you and for me. Thank you. Guess what, guys? It's my look like trash and get stuff done day. You know what, that kind of day. And I just learned that you cannot renew interlibrary loans. The Sea of Regret is due today, and I have not started it at all because I have just been working my way through Moment in Peking. So I'm gonna try and read this all today because it's a slim volume. It's how long are you? Hello. It is 205 pages. I can do that. That's just like, I feel like that's just like a couple hours. So I'm gonna do all the different paperwork and stuff that I have to get done today, and I'm gonna read all this, and then I'm gonna return it to the library. As for Moment in Peking, I am really loving this. Actually, I'm having a really great time. It really reminds me of like Little Women or other 19th century family dramas. It's all about a few interconnected families, especially their daughters. I think the writing is really engaging. It's very descriptive and rich and lush, and it has just enough historical events to like keep my nerd brain activated, but also like it's just very insightful and fun. There's just like lots of juicy drama, but then also really examines like the challenges of Chinese women in around the turn of the century. You can tell the author is very progressive. I looked him up on Wikipedia and he had multiple daughters. Oh, also, I'm sorry, he wrote this in English. Yutang wrote this book in English. Sorry about that. So I guess new title to the project. It is I read 3 books by Chinese authors for every decade. Not necessarily translated from Chinese, but that's okay because I make the rules. It's my random challenge that I have fabricated. And so I'm going to do whatever I want. But so far, I actually am really loving this. And I think a lot of people would like this. If you like classics, it's really written in like that typical 19th century classic kind of style. So if you like classics, I think you'd like Moment in Peking. So that's what I'm doing so far. Hello. It's bedtime. One of the most important times of the day because this is the time of day when I stay up way too late reading books that I have arbitrarily assigned myself to read. So, for example, Moment in Peking, which I am currently on page 254, an absolute monstrosity of a book. I'm sorry, I did have to return Sea of Regret before I could like talk to you about it. So I'll just talk about that right now before then addressing Moment in Peking, which I will have for another week. I have not made nearly as much progress as I intended to, but you know, if I really set my mind to it, I think I can do it. I did just read Sea of Regret in one day, so I think I can do that again. Just reading more than 100 pages a day with this one. I think that'll be effective. Anyway, so with Sea of Regret, it was 2 short novels, both published in 1906, I believe. The first one, oh gosh, I think it's called, oh no, how have I already forgotten? I don't have the book with me to like look it up. Okay, I think it's called The Sea of Stones, I want to say. And the second one is called The Sea of Regret. So The Sea of Stones was published first, and then 5 months later, The Sea of Regret was published in response to The Sea of Stones. Both of them are about free marriages versus arranged marriages, which are the opposite of each other. A free marriage is a marriage that is not arranged. So basically, the first story is about a couple who have been kind of lovers since childhood. Like they met when they were very young and were like each other's first love, and so them trying to meet in secret and then convince their parents to let them get married. The kind of thesis of the whole story is that the first person narrator, who is the boy in the couple, because they're both like 15 in the majority of the story, he's trying to argue that Confucianism and the subsequent Confucian attachment to arranged marriage and respecting your parents and doing what your parents want you to and like marrying who your parents want you to marry is the reason why his life has been ruined and he wasn't able to be with the one that he loves. However, what is really interesting is that in the story, spoiler alert in case you want to read this 1906 Chinese short novel, they do get engaged. Like, they do convince their parents to allow them to get engaged. It's just that then the Boxer Rebellion breaks out and they have to flee the city and they get separated because they each go with their own families. And I can't even remember, and I just read it. And then the girl dies. So the guy is saying, like, and if only our love was respected on the same way that an arranged marriage was, we would have been able to get married sooner, and then we would have been together when we fled the city, and she would have come with me and had been safe. Because I think she like starved herself to death because of grief or something. And he's like, but if I had been with her, like, she was so sad because she wasn't with me, and if I had been with her, then never would have happened. Like, I guess, but it's more like they weren't able to be together because of the Boxer Rebellion. And it wasn't even that they had an untraditional marriage. Basically, his dad was like, no, I don't want you to get married too soon because you're only 15 and I think that you should be older when you get married. And so, I don't know, like, the moral of the story is supposed to be Confucianism promoting arranged marriage is bad, but it wasn't a story about Confucianism leading to a free marriage not happening, because it could have happened, but then the Boxer Rebellion happened. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not a direct link. Like, I don't think it's a good argument. Like, so I don't really get it. And then what I thought was also interesting is that The Sea of Regret, the second short novel, does the exact same thing, where it is refuting, and it's in response to The Sea of Stones, but it is showing how arranged marriage and filial piety, doing what your parents want, is like so important and like such a virtuous thing to do. But it also doesn't do that. Like, so it's about two couples, their engagements have been arranged by their parents, and then once again, the Boxer Rebellion breaks out. Oh, do you know what I'm talking about when I say the Boxer Rebellion? It was like right at the turn of the century, from like 1898, 99 up until like 1901, like peaking in 1900. It was like this religious peasant uprising that was anti-foreigners and anyone associated with foreigners. There was a lot of violence and chaos. It ended in foreign troops like marching on the major cities. I can't remember what happened significantly after that. Yeah, these two young couples engaged in these arranged engagements, and then the Boxer Rebellion breaks out and they all get separated as they flee for their lives. And then, so in one couple, they get separated. The girl is like taking care of her dying mother, and then when she finally gets reunited with this boy that she has been engaged to, she's been so faithful to him and has been so careful and like true to him through all of these trials and tribulations. And then when she finally meets him again, he has married a lady of the night and has become addicted to opium, and then he dies. And so she goes and becomes a Buddhist nun. And then the other couple, they get separated. The guy is like super loyal and faithful to his fiance throughout all of these tribulations in the Boxer Rebellion. And when he finally is reunited with her, she has become a lady of the night. And so he goes and becomes a hermit in the mountains. It's supposed to be like basically this fable about how arranged marriage and like staying true to what your parents want for you is good and virtuous, except that in this too, it still is bad. It's still, both couples turn out like ending in tragedy. So I don't really see how that's really, except I don't know, it really did seem like the fact that they stuck to these engagements and were so devoted to their parents' wishes, even though they ended in tragedy, was even more honorable, you know? Was kind of how it felt. So I just thought it was interesting that in both stories, the argument didn't really match what was happening. Because you'd think that the first story would be like the cultural emphasis on arranged marriage ruins true love. Here's a way that the importance in society on arranged marriage ruined my love story. But it wasn't exactly that. And then the second story, you'd think that it would emphasize how arranged marriages are so righteous and pure, and like here's how it strengthens your marriage and family and is good for you, but it didn't do that. Both of these stories, written by separate authors, conveying separate, like opposite messages, did the same thing rhetorically. It clearly was like the style. So that was interesting. I didn't talk too much about Moment in Peking earlier, but so far, I did talk about how I'm enjoying it. Just so you know, so far, the main things that have happened, there have been kind of two main story arcs. The first one also followed the Boxer Rebellion, where the main family flees Peking, Beijing. During the Boxer Rebellion, their oldest daughter gets separated from them. They're searching for her, and it's very distressing, and she ends up in this like complete other city. She's like 9 years old or something. She is rescued by like a family that is like friends with her family. So then once she meets them, we start to get to know that family and all the members of that family and the things going on with them. So now these two families are like intertwined. So that was the first story arc. The second one was about a girl connected to that second family and her staying so true and faithful to this arranged marriage with one of the sons in that family. So she's connected to the family because she's engaged to the son. So it's all about like how she's so devoted to their engagement. So like, again, wow, look at all these themes in common in this era of Chinese literature. And spoiler alert, she becomes like so devoted and all these things, and then he gets sick and dies. And it's very sad because they're like so sweet and pure teenagers who like just love each other, and then he gets sick and dies. That was like pretty drawn out. It was really tragic. It really made me think about how also in The Sea of Regret and in this one, a lot of people get sick, really, really sick, and die. It's interesting to me just how terrible diseases are clearly such a huge figure and concern at this time, because the tone and the writing style of the two short novels versus this one is very different, but they're touching on similar topics. I mean, obviously, I picked them because they're in the same decade, but of the entire 10 years, both focus a lot on the Boxer Rebellion. So I really feel like I am learning a lot about this era. That's all. I'm gonna read a bit more and then go to bed. Good night. Okay, so I have finally finished Moment in Peking. I'm giving it 5 stars because I just loved it so much. Well, obviously, that's usually why I rate things 5 stars. The middle was very drama. Lots of scandals, gossip, and romance, and heartbreak and tragedy, vengeful ghosts, sabotage, subterfuge, kidnapping, tragic, unexpected deaths, illnesses, accidents, all of these extremely dramatic events for this very large extended family. The end gets very dark because the second Sino-Japanese War starts. The book does not shy away from like what happened to people, because the family just has to respond to this really intense crisis that is happening and has just come to their doorstep, and what they have to do to keep each other safe and what they witness. Not everyone comes out unscathed. It was such a striking ending. And it ends with the very center main character walking into a crowd of refugees with her family, just walking to find a place to find safety. There's a sense of hope that like it's going to be okay, but that it's going to be hard. That was the feeling at the very end. What I found the most impressive was that it's 800 pages, so many characters, and the most central characters for a course of 30 years of their lives, from when they're children to when they have children or very young grandchildren. I really felt like I got to know them very deeply and care about them. And then there are other characters that you get to know really well along the way as well. And even the flawed characters, you get to know some of them get redeemed. Like there's an evil sister-in-law character who becomes a spy, who becomes a double agent, saying she's spying for the Japanese, but is actually spying on the Japanese for the Chinese. And then she gets shot for being a spy. It has this heroic ending, even though she was this evil, cheating sister-in-law. It's just so exciting to get to know everyone so well and to see the nuance. Also, you can so tell that Lin Yutang is a girl dad, because it's all about the role of women, and especially how the role of women was really changing during this time of Chinese history. And the women in the book, in the family, are definitely the main focus and what they are doing. And there was one passage that I especially liked, and I'm going to be that person and I'm going to read it. But it was also because Mulan ardently wished she had been a boy, that she injected into her younger brother the pride of family and all the passionate hopes and longings that were part of herself and unrealized. How many girls in those days had dreams that were never fulfilled and ambitions that were never satisfied, hopes that were thwarted on the threshold of marriage and later lay dormant in the breast and were expressed in the form of hopes for their sons? How many wanted to go on with their studies and could not? How many wanted to go to college and could not? How many wanted to marry the type of young man that they cared for and could not? The vague ideals that adolescents shaped in their girls' minds were like flower buds, plucked before their time or broken off by the wind. These were the lovely unsung women, the silent heroines, who married husbands either worthy or unworthy of them, and whose record was left for posterity only in a simple tombstone, standing before an earthen mound among wild berries and thistles on some village hill. That's so many cultures through so much of history. And the author wrote this in 1939, and he was so aware of what women were capable of and what they were going through. And I thought that was expressed over and over again through the experiences of the women in this story. I think that any Sinophile, anyone crazy about China and learning about China, Chinese history, culture, will love this one. But also, if you love classics, I also think that you'll love this one. It has the same feeling as a lot of the like European 19th century classics. If you can get your hands on it. I think the 800 pages are worth it. If you're going to be 800 pages, you better be worth it. And this one, honestly, this might be one of the nerdiest things I've said. I think this is one of my new favorite books. This obscure, hard to find 1939 Chinese novel. This one's going to stick with me for sure. I would like to announce that I have failed. I have failed this initial quest to read 3 books by Chinese authors for every decade of the 20th century because this book is not real. This book does not exist. This is a fake book, okay? I already was suspicious when I saw the multiple typos on the cover, but I was hopeful. I was hopeful that maybe the translation team inside was different than whatever team did the cover, okay? Absolutely not. I don't think there was any team that was working on this book. I think this entire book is a scam. Every sentence in this book is egregious, absolutely horrifically translated. Multiple errors inside every sentence, tenses switching multiple times within the same sentence, the pronouns of one person switching within a sentence. I think that this was not even translated by a person. This came out in March 2023, and that was like right after ChatGPT came out. So just the explosion of open source AI type programs. I think that this was the original text, which does exist. I did look up the author, Zhenya. He did exist. He was a real person, and he really did write a novel that I think is actually translated to The Death of Yu and Li. He really did write books, and he wrote something similar to this, like back in the early 20th century. And I think that someone just took that original text and ran it through some equivalent of Google Translate, and this is what we have in our hands. Just to demonstrate why I think it wasn't even a person doing this. I don't think a person looked at any of this before it was published. Here's just an example. Meng Sha's family name is He, and her given name is Ping. Her alias is Misanthrope Qingling. Her nationality is Taihu Lake of Suzhou. When he was born, her mother dreamed a piece of colorful cloud flying from the sky down to earth, so she gave him Meng Sha as his name. From a family of scholar, a distinguished family, his father is a scholar, gave birth to a daughter, 2 sons. The eldest son is named Zhenqing. The second son is Meng Sha. His parents loved him specially, for he was born with dream and strangeness. Double pearl and 2 jades brought honor to the family and impressed all the relatives, who gave an unceasing praise. Like, I kept trying to read it, like, in my head, trying to imagine that maybe this is a person with maybe intermediate English skills translating this, but I just don't think so. I just think that there's a lot of incredibly basic grammar principles that is very easy for a machine to confuse. It's very easy for a machine to confuse pronouns and tenses when translating from like one language into another, when those 2 languages have different rules about those things. But I think that a person would know things that were that obvious. Referring to Meng Sha as both he, him, and her, she, and just switching all the time, like, none of it makes any sense. I also went to moontrans.com, which is supposedly the name of the publishing company. Now there's a different one in the back here. Lightning Source LLC. I don't know. But I went to this, moontrans.com. It just comes to a login page in Chinese. There's nothing actually on this website that you can see. I read like 40 pages of this. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe this. This is just AI slop. Someone, somewhere, maybe China, maybe whatever this company is in Laverne, Tennessee, someone somewhere ran an old Chinese novel through a translator and then slapped a cover on it. And now chumps like me are buying it. This sucks. Anyway, I couldn't actually find a third novel by a Chinese author that takes place sometime between 1900 to 1909. So this is what we got. This is what we got, folks. Sorry. But overall, I got to read one of my new favorite novels. I got to read a kind of dull one with historical insight, and I got to learn that stuff like this exists, whatever this is. It is my understanding that this is a tragic love story. And then there was the 2 novellas, which were also about love stories, and then all of the romantic drama in Moment in Peking. So obviously that's what was popular at the time. And then I guess the 2 books that I did read all the way through, just lots about arranged marriage versus free marriage, doing what your parents want for you versus doing what you want for yourself. And I thought that was really interesting to see that was clearly on so many people's minds. So overall, I did learn some things. Once I get into like the 40s, I'll be doing way better with actually being able to find good options. But this long ago, translated from Chinese, it's just hard to find. Such is the challenge I've given myself. But I tried. I found 3. I just didn't read 3. And that was my choice.